Hey y'all, welcome back. This is Tony, the black girl who reads. Welcome to the podcast episode today. We're going to be reading chapter number 9 and 10 of the book, The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. So like I said, definitely welcome. I saw some of y'all out there listening and downloading and that kind of thing. So I'm like, I got to do another episode or chapter episode for y'all. So I want to make sure that I include 2 chapters this time so y'all can have a little bit more to listen to. I guess I put it that way. So let's go ahead and get into this, y'all. Chapter 9. Okay. Uncle Herbert and Aunt Alberta's silver wedding was delicately referred to among the Sterlings during the following weeks as the time we first noticed poor Valancy was a little, you understand. Leave this girl alone. Shoo. In the first sentence, leave this girl alone. Not for worlds would any of the Sterlings have said out and out at first that Valancy had gone mildly insane, or even that her mind was slightly deranged. Uncle Benjamin was considered to have gone entirely too far when he had ejaculated, "She's dippy, I tell you. She's dippy," and was only excused because of the outrageousness of Valancy's conduct at the aforesaid wedding dinner. But Miss Frederick and Cousin Stickles had noticed a few things that made them uneasy before dinner. It began with the rose bush, of course, and Valancy never was really quite right again. She did not seem to worry in the least over the fact that her mother was not speaking to her. You would never... hold on. Okay, I'm having all these messages, y'all. Give me a second. You would never suppose she noticed it at all. She had flatly refused to take either purple pills or red ferns bitters. She had announced coolly that she did not intend to answer the name of Doss any longer. And you wonder why. If y'all heard the other 8 chapters, put in the comments how you wonder why. Look at how she treated. I wouldn't either. She had told Cousin Stickles that she wished she would give up wearing that brooch with Cousin Artemis Stickles' hair in it. Which sounds like it's gross, but I don't know. Never mind. Just, okay. She had moved her bed in her room to the opposite corner. She had read Magic of Wings Sunday afternoon. When Cousin Stickles had rebuked her, Valancy had said indifferently, "Oh, I forgot it was Sunday," and had gone on reading it. And let me get some water, y'all. I hope y'all got y'all something to drink. I should have said that in the beginning, but I hope y'all got y'all something to drink too. I got my handy dandy little, I guess, Stanley cup thing. I don't know what it's called, but with some water. I'll put it that way. Drink whatever you like. Let me put this down, and I had to take a sip, y'all. Throat getting tingly. Cousin Stickles had seen a terrible thing. She had caught Valancy sliding down the banister. Cousin Stickles did not tell Miss Frederick this. Poor Amelia was worried enough as it was. But it was Valancy's announcement on Saturday night that she was going to go to the Anglican church, that she was not going to go to the Anglican church anymore, that broke through Miss Frederick's stony silence. Not going to church anymore? Doss, have you absolutely taken leave? "Oh, I'm going to church," said Valancy airily. "I'm going to the Presbyterian church, but to the Anglican, I can't pronounce this, y'all. I don't know what it is. Anglican church. Okay, there we go. I will not go." This was even worse. Miss Frederick had recourse to tears, having found outraged majesty had ceased to be effective. "What have you gotten against the Anglican church?" she sobbed. "Nothing. Only just that you've always made me go there. If you made me go to the Presbyterian church, I'd want to go to the Anglican church." She's been defiant, y'all. Y'all know why. Put it in the comments. Is that a nice thing to say to your mother? Or how true it is that it is sharper than the serpent's tooth to have a thankless child? Is that a nice thing to say to your daughter? Said unrepentant Valancy. So Valancy's behavior at the silver wedding was not quite the surprise to Miss Frederick and Christine Stickles that it was to the rest. They were doubtful about the wisdom of taking her, but concluded it would make more talk if they didn't. Perhaps she would behave herself and so far no outsider suspected there was anything queer about her. By a special mercy of Providence, it had poured torrents Sunday morning, so Valancy had not carried out her hideous threat of going to the Presbyterian church. Valancy would not have cared in the least if they had left her at home. These family celebrations were all hopelessly dull. I know a lot of us feel that way. I've felt that way sometimes too, y'all. Put it in the comments. I know you ain't the only one. I ain't the only one. The Valancy ain't the only one. Sometimes it's like, what in the world? Ooh, but the Sterlings always celebrated everything. It was a long-established custom. Even Miss Frederick gave a dinner party on her wedding anniversary, and Cousin Stickles had friends in to supper on her birthday. Valancy hated these entertainments because they had to pinch and save and contrive for weeks afterwards to pay for them. But she wanted to go to the silver wedding. It would hurt Uncle Herbert's feelings if she stayed away, and she rather liked Uncle Herbert. Besides, she wanted to look over all her relatives from her new angle. Defiant angle, might I say. It would be an excellent place to make public her Declaration of Independence if occasion offered. "Put on your brown silk dress," said Miss Sterling, as if there were anything else to put on. Valancy had only one festive dress, that snuffy brown silk Aunt Isabel had given her. Aunt Isabel had decreed that Valancy should never wear colors. Wow. They did not become... What happened? Okay, what just happened to my phone all of a sudden? Okay, I'm not sure. I am not sure, y'all. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened all of a sudden. Jesus pieces. What in the world? Okay, back to it. Aunt Isabel had decreed that Valancy should never wear colors. They did not become her. When she was young, they allowed her to wear white, but that had been tactfully dropped for some years. Valancy put on a brown silk. It had a high collar and long sleeves. She had never had a dress with low neck and elbow sleeves, although they had been worn, and even in Deerwood, for over a year. But she did not do her hair pompadour. She knotted it on her neck and pulled it over her ears. She thought it became her, only the little knot was so absurdly small. Miss Frederick resented the hair, but decided it was wisest to say nothing on the eve of the party. It was so important that Valancy should be kept in good humor, if possible, until it was over. Miss Frederick did not reflect that this was the first time in her life that she had thought it necessary to consider Valancy's humors. But then Valancy had never quite been queer before. On their way to Uncle Herbert's, Miss Frederick and Cousin Stickles walking in front, Valancy trotting meekly along behind. Roaring Abel drove past them, drunk as usual, but not in the roaring stage. Just drunk enough to be excessively polite. He raised his disreputable old tartan cap with the air of a monarch saluting his subjects, and swept them a grand bow. Miss Frederick and Cousin Stickles dared not cut Roaring Abel altogether. He was the only person in Deerwood who could be got to do... Who could be got to do odd jobs of carpentering and repairing when they needed to be done. So it would not do to offend him. But they responded with only the stiffest, slightest of bows. Roaring Abel must be kept in his place. Valancy behind them did a thing they were fortunately spared seeing. She smiled gaily and waved her hand to Roaring Abel. Why not? She had always liked the old sinner. He was such a jolly, picturesque, unashamed reprobate, and stood out against the drab respectability of Deerwood in his customs like a red flag of revolt and protest. Only a few nights ago, Abel had gone through Deerwood in the wee smalls, shouting oaths at the top of his stentorian voice, which could be heard for miles, and lashing his horse into a furious gallop as he tore along prim, proper Elm Street. Yelling in blasphemy like a fiend, shuddered Cousin Stickles at the breakfast table. I cannot understand why the judgment of the Lord has not fallen upon that man long ere this, said Miss Frederick putently, as if she thought Providence was very dilatory and ought to have a gentle reminder. He'll be picked up dead some morning. He'll fall under his horse's hoofs and be trampled to death. Oh, goodness, said Cousin Stickles. Good Lord. Okay, now, reassuringly. Valancy had said nothing, of course, but she wondered to herself if Roaring Abel's periodical sprees were not his futile protests against the poverty and drudgery and monotony of his existence. She went on a dream spree in her blue castle. Roaring Abel, having no imagination, could not do that. His escapes from reality had to be concrete. So she waved at him today with a sudden fellow feeling, and Roaring Abel, not too drunk to be astonished, nearly fell off his seat in amazement. So he must like her some, y'all. I'm going to assume. By this time, they had reached Maple Avenue and Uncle Herbert's house, a large, pretentious structure peppered with meaningless bay windows and excrescent porches. A house that always looks like a stupid, prosperous, self-satisfied man with warts on his face. Let me get some more water, y'all. Oh, okay, water in the container. A house like that, said Valancy solemnly, is a blasphemy. Miss Frederick was shaken to her soul. I'm sure she was. What had Valancy said? Was it profane or only just queer? Miss Frederick took off her hat in Aunt Alberta's spare room with trembling hands. She made one more feeble attempt to avert disaster. She held Valancy back on the landing as Cousin Stickles went downstairs. Won't you try to remember you're a lady, she pleaded. Oh, if there was only any hope of being able to forget it, said Valancy wearily. Miss Frederick felt that she had not deserved this from Providence. Y'all, that's the end of chapter 9, y'all. Like I said, Valancy getting her rudeness on up with it. They were breaking out her little shell, it sound like. Like I said, y'all, this has been an interesting read. Let me know in the comments how you like chapter 9, y'all. Valancy is really stirring things up. I think she is. So let's go into chapter 10, y'all. Let's see where it's going to go after this, y'all. I'm curious to know because, like I said, this story has been like, what in the world is really going on? I'm sure I can identify with this. I'm sure some or many of y'all can too, about being held back most of your life, and now you're trying to break out of your shell and do things the opposite way that you always have done because folks have tried to lead your life and you didn't get a chance or say so in anything. I love this story, y'all. A lot of us can relate to this. So let's get on to chapter 10, y'all. Chapter 10. I have a net in her. Get out of here, stupid thing. Jesus. I think I killed it, y'all. This thing is driving me crazy. All right, chapter 10. Chapter 10, chapter 10. Bless this food to our use, and consecrate our lives to thy service, said Uncle Herbert briskly. Aunt Wellington frowned. She always considered Herbert's graces entirely too short and flippant. A grace to be a grace in Aunt Wellington's eyes had to be at least 3 minutes long and uttered in an earthly tone between a groan and a chant. Now, y'all, I know some of y'all have been at different dinners and places where people just going on a grace, before the dinner prayer and all this kind of stuff. Y'all starving, stomachs grumbling. They talking for 10 minutes. Okay, God thanks for this food. Let's eat. That's all we got to say. That's what it sounded like he said, too. I know y'all can identify with that, y'all. Let me know in the comments. I know it's the only one. Oh, my God. As a protest, she kept her head bent a perceptible time after all the rest had been lifted. When she permitted herself to sit upright, she found Valancy looking at her. Afterwards, Aunt Wellington averred that she had known from that moment that there was something wrong with Valancy. There ain't nothing wrong. She tried to outrun her life. That's all that's wrong. In those queer slanted eyes of hers, we should always have known she was not entirely right with eyes like that. There was an odd gleam of mockery and amusement, as if Valancy were laughing at her. Such a thing was unthinkable, of course. Aunt Wellington at once ceased to think it. Valancy was enjoying herself. She had never enjoyed herself at a family reunion before. In social functions, as in childish games, she had only one filled in. Her clan had always considered her very dull. She had no parlor tricks. She had been in the habit of taking refuge from the boredom of family parties in her blue castle, which resulted in an absent-mindedness that increased her reputation for dullness and vacuity. She has no social presence whatsoever, Aunt Wellington had decreed once and for all. This little gnat, I thought I killed it. Nobody dreamed that Valancy was dumb in their presence merely because she was afraid of them. Now she was no longer afraid of them. The shackles had been stricken off her soul. She was quite prepared to talk if occasion offered. Meanwhile, she was giving herself such freedom of thought as she had never dared to take before. She let herself go with a wild inner exultation as Uncle Herbert carved the turkey. Let me get some water, y'all. And I hope y'all are enjoying these chapters so far, y'all. If y'all are, be sure y'all subscribe. And of course, bring your friends along and let them know what's going on this podcast too. The Black Girl Who Reads. So, and I'm that black girl, so let's get back into this. Uncle Herbert gave Valancy a second look that day. Being a man, he didn't know what she had done to her hair, but he thought surprisingly that Doss was not such a bad looking girl after all. And he put an extra piece of white meat on her plate. Excuse me, what herb is most injurious to a young lady's beauty? Propounded Uncle Benjamin, by way of starting conversation, loosening things up a bit, as he, would have said. Valancy, whose duty it was to say what, did not say it. Nobody else said it, so Uncle Benjamin, after an expectant pause, had to answer, time, and felt that his riddle had fallen flat. He looked resentfully at Valancy, who had never failed him before, but Valancy did not seem even to be aware of him. She was gazing around the table, examining relentlessly everyone in this depressing assembly of sensible people and watching their little squirms with a detached, amused smile. So, there were the people she had always held in reverence and fear. She seemed to see them with new eyes. And I know when I just saw these with new eyes, I know a lot of times when we're, of course, going through whatever it's going through family situations like this, and you have a revelation of something, and you see it with new eyes, you can never go back to the way that it was. I can't wait to hear the rest of the story, y'all. I cannot wait. Big, capable, patronizing, voluble Aunt Mildred, who thought herself the cleverest woman in the clan, her husband a little lower than the angels, and her children wonders. Had not her son Howard been all through teething at 11 months, and she could not tell you the best way to do everything, from cooking mushrooms to picking up a snake. What a bore she was. What ugly moles she had on her face. Cousin Gladys, who was always praising her son, who had died young and always fighting with her living one. She had neuritis, or what she called neuritis. It jumped about from one part of her body to another. It was a convenient thing. If anybody wanted her to go somewhere, she didn't want to go. She had neuritis in her legs. Lord, my feet hurt. I can't go to the store. Lord, have mercy, liar. What in the world? I'm going to start using I got neuritis too. How about y'all? Oh my gosh. Lord. And always, if any mental effort was required, she could have neuritis in her head. She can't think with neuritis in your head, dear. What an old humbug you are, thought Valancy impiously. Aunt Isabel. Valancy counted her chins. Aunt Isabel was the critic of the clan. She had always gone about squashing people flat. More members of it than Valancy were afraid of her. She had, it conceded, a biting tongue. I wonder what would happen to your face if you ever smiled, speculated Valancy unblushingly. Second cousin Sarah Taylor, with her great pale expressionless eyes, who was noted for the variety of her pickle recipes and for nothing else. So afraid of saying something indiscreet that she never said anything worth listening to. So proper that she blushed when she saw the advertisement picture of a corset and had put a dress on her Venus de Milo statue, which made it look real tasty. Little cousin Georgiana, not such a bad little soul, but dreary, very. Always looking as if she had just been starched and ironed. Always afraid to let herself go. The only thing she really enjoyed was a funeral. You knew where you were with the corpse. Nothing more could happen to it. But while there was life, there was fear. Uncle James, handsome, black, with his sarcastic, trap-like mouth, and iron-gray sideburns, whose favorite amusement was to write controversial letters to the Christian Times attacking modernism. Valancy always wondered if he looked as solemn when he was asleep as when he did when he was awake. No wonder his wife had died young. Valancy remembered her. A pretty sensitive thing. Uncle James had denied her everything she wanted and showered on her everything she did not want. He had killed her, quite legally. She had been smothered and starved. Wow. All right, Valancy, she's telling the whole story. Seeing everything with new eyes. Uncle Benjamin, wheezy, pussy mouth, with great pouches under eyes that held nothing in reverence. Uncle Wellington, long, pallid face, thin, pale yellow hair, one of the fair Sterlings, thin, stooping body, abominably high forehead with such ugly wrinkles, and eyes about as intelligent as a fish's, thought Valancy. Looks like a cartoon himself. Oh my goodness, this is getting funny, y'all. I'm like, what is going on? She going off on everybody. But I guess she's thinking in her head, rather. Aunt Wellington, named Mary, but called by her husband's name to distinguish her from Great Aunt Mary. A massive, dignified, permanent lady. Splendidly arranged iron gray hair, rich, fashionable beaded dress, had her moles removed by electrolysis, which Aunt Mildred thought was a wicked invasion of the purposes of God. Uncle Herbert, with his spiky gray hair. Aunt Alberta, who twisted her mouth so unpleasantly in talking and had a great reputation for unselfishness because she was always giving up a lot of things she didn't want. Valancy let them off easily in her judgment because she liked them. Even if they were in the Milton's expressive phase, stupidly looking. But she wondered for what inscrutable reason Aunt Alberta had seen fit to tie a black ribbon around each of her chubby arms above the elbow. That sounds tacky. Then she looked across the table at Olive. Olive, who had been held up to her as a paragon of beauty, behavior, and success, as long as she could remember. Why can't you hold yourself like Olive, Doss? Why can't you stand correctly like Olive, Doss? Why can't you speak prettily like Olive, Doss? Why can't you make an effort, Doss? Valancy's elfin eyes lost their mocking glitter and became pensive and sorrowful. You could not ignore or disdain Olive. It was quite impossible to deny that she was beautiful and effective, and sometimes she was a little intelligent. Her mouth might be a trifle heavy. She might show her fine, white, regular teeth rather too lavishly when she smiled. But when all was said and done, Olive justified Uncle Benjamin's summing up, a stunning girl. Yes, Valancy agreed in her heart that Olive was stunning. Rich golden brown hair, elaborately dressed with a sparkling bandeau, holding its glossy puffs in place. Large, brilliant blue eyes and thick silken lashes, face of rose and bare neck of snow, rising above her gown. Great pearl bubbles in her ears, the blue-white diamond flame on her long, smooth, waxen finger with its rosy, pointed nail, arms of marble, gleaming through green chiffon and shadowy lace. Let me move you. I'm trying to move around a little bit. Valancy felt suddenly thankful that her own scrawny arms were decently swathed in brown silk. Then she resumed her tabulation of Olive's charms. Tall, queenly, confident. Everything that Valancy was not. Dimples, too, in cheeks and chin. A woman with dimples always gets her way, thought Valancy, in a reoccurring spasm of bitterness at the fate which had denied her even one dimple. Olive was only 1 year younger than Valancy, though a stranger would have thought there was at least 10 years between them, because nobody ever dreaded old maidenhood for her. Olive had been surrounded by a crowd of eager beaux since her early teens, just as her mirror was surrounded by a fringe of cards, photographs, programs, and invitations. At 18, when she graduated from Harvard College, Olive had been engaged to Will Desmond, lawyer in embryo. Will Desmond had died, and Olive had mourned for him properly for 2 years. When she was 23, she had a hectic affair with Donald Jackson. But Aunt and Uncle Wellington disapproved of that. And in the end, Olive dutifully gave him up. Wow. Nobody in the Sterling clan, whatever outsiders might say, hinted that she did so because Donald himself was cooling off. However that might be, Olive's third venture met with everybody's approval. Cecil Price was clever and handsome and one of the Port Lawrence's Prices. Olive had been engaged to him for 3 years. He had just graduated in civil engineering, and they were to be married soon as he landed a contract. Olive's hope chest was full to flowing over with exquisite things, and Olive had already confided to Valancy that what her wedding dress was to be. Ivory silk draped with lace, white satin court train lined with pale green georgette, heirloom veil of Brussels lace. Valancy knew also that though Olive had not told her, that the bridesmaids were selected and she was not among them. That hurt, y'all. Valancy had, after a fashion, always been Olive's confidant, perhaps because she was the only girl in the connection who could not bore Olive with return confidences. Olive always told Valancy all the details of her love affairs, from the days when the little boys in school used to persecute her with love letters. Yeah, I've been compared to people before too. And like I said, I'm sure some of y'all have been compared to your siblings or somebody else in the family or another partner or whoever it was. That hurts people's feelings. And it makes you bitter and upset, just like Valancy has said already. And her family just keep pushing. As y'all heard in the first 9 chapters, they kept, why don't you like her? Why don't you like her? They said, I think that was like the first few chapters, they were saying stuff like that. That hurts, and nobody forgets that stuff either. Valancy could not comfort herself by thinking these affairs mythical. Olive really had them. Many men had gone mad over her besides the 3 fortunate ones. I don't know what the poor idiots see in me that drives them to make such doable idiots of themselves. Olive was wont to say. Valancy would have liked to say, I don't either. But truth and diplomacy kept both restraining her. She did know perfectly well. Olive Sterling was one of those girls about whom men did go mad, just as indubitably as she, Valancy, was one of the girls at whom no man ever looked twice. And yet, thought Valancy, summing up with her new and merciless conclusiveness, she's like a dewless morning. There's something lacking. Y'all, I'm loving these 2 chapters, y'all. Like I said, Valancy is well, the last one I just read in 10, she's just talking about everybody. So letting y'all know what kind of character she sees of these people in her family at the table and that kind of thing. Like I said, y'all, I can't say she went all the way off the rocker yet, but she on her way, it sounds like. Like I said, definitely, I know some of y'all can relate to this story and what I was saying in here too, with the comments that I was dropping and stuff like that. Let me know in the comments how these 2 chapters, how you can relate to these 2 chapters. Let me know, y'all. I definitely want to know. So I'll see y'all in the next reading of The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. So again, this is your girl, Tony, the black girl who reads. Like I said, I'm definitely glad that you all are here, and I'm definitely glad that y'all are reading along with me. I love that. So again, make sure y'all, of course, subscribe to the podcast, or if you see this on YouTube, subscribe there as well. So like I said, y'all, peace out. I'll see y'all in the next one. Have a great one, y'all. Until next time.